Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Delhi High Court has given a direct message to the centre, and that is to tighten regulations on the language used in web series streamed on OTT platforms. Hearing a case related to a web series in the court which observed that the profanity of the language used was of the extent that it could not have been heard without shocking or alarming the people around. The court has also observed that in Indian society even today, swear words are not spoken in the presence of the elderly at religious places or in front of women and children. The court said that the use of these obscene words and foul language on social media platforms also needs to be regulated when it crosses a particular line, as it can be a true threat to impressionable minds, adding that all this cannot receive protection under the garb of free speech.
You were watching the News Hour at 9, debate number 2, on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And more of this, let's go across to our guest. Joining us with us is Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow of the IPCS. Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst, is with us. Desh Ratan Nigam, lawyer, joins us on the broadcast. Sriraj Nair, national spokesperson of the VHP, is with us. Let me start with you first, Tehseen Poonawala. You must have seen what the Delhi High Court has observed, and some of those arguments that the court has, expressed concern about. It says that it has gone through several of these web series. It has given the reasoning, legally speaking, and has, then advised the centre to bring in a new legislation. Where do you stand on this, in terms of the current debate? Because it has been controversial in the past as well. There have been objections to the kind of content that certain OTT platforms have carried in the past as well.
So thank you, Madhav. I'm very clear on this. As so far as OTT platforms are concerned, there is no requirement, with due respect to the honorable courts before whose majesty I bow, for the honorable judges to do all this effort and go through all this OTT content. Don't do it. Those who want to watch it will watch it. Those who don't want to watch it will not watch it. The judges are here not to preach morality. Like the honorable judge said, oh, you do not abuse in front of religious places. I agree. So don't watch an OTT series in front of a religious place. An OTT, by definition, is generally seen on your own individual device, sometimes with friends, with like-minded people. For example, Abhijit and I may enjoy something. We don't need your lordships to tell us what to do, what not to do. And more importantly, and I'm going to be very blunt about it, OTT is something that will be India's soft power. So you definitely need regulations in social media. They will self-regulate. You don't need the government and the judges to come here and regulate. So thank you to the honorable judges for looking at all these series, but no thank you. Do it if you want to do it. Don't do it for us. Okay. I'm very clear on that.
Desh Ratan Nigam, I think at least one or two points that Tehseen makes are very pertinent. Ultimately, if this is about choice and free will, nobody is forcing anybody to, subscribe to an OTT platform. If someone believes, for instance, that children in their house could get, influenced in some manner, there are child locks, etc., that have been put in place. And number two, don't subscribe to a service if you do not want it, or you find something that could potentially be offensive. Why is that being forced on everyone is a question that many would ask.
Madhav, in fact, there is a difference between social media platform and OTT platforms. Social media platforms are already covered, and so is OTT under the online curated content under the IT rules of 2021. Now, whether those rules, which are already there in place, and the sections in the Indian Penal Code, such as Section 292, which deals with the obscene content, whether they have been able to deliver or have they able to, control that kind of a content. Yes, this content is so open that children with the phones can also use it today, and therefore this is where some kind of a regulation is required. Government never wanted to act like a policeman or an ombudsman, because they were very clear that there should be a self-regulation. And once the self-regulation was failing, then certain amendments were done in 2022 in order to make them more effective. Now, if that also doesn't work, which the courts have also observed, then what is to be done? Then the certification process, which is already there in the film industry for the movies, can be brought in. That is one suggestion that can be brought in, and linking with, Aadhaar, some kind of a linking, although Supreme Court may not like it. But how do you control that this kind of content the children do not have access to? Because they have phones.
That has huge implications for privacy, sir, what you're saying, Mr. Nikam.
No, I'm saying so with a great sense of responsibility. Privacy vis-a-vis the depravity and corruption of mind of the children. You have to balance the two.
But we are not saying above judgment of that. what may be a bit depraved act for one person, it's entirely subjective. And I want Abhijit to come in on this because Abhijit,
no, I can tell you the law on this. I can tell you the law on this also.
Okay. We'll get to all those finer points. But I saw Abhijit raising his eyebrows. Abhijit, you want to come in on this because he says that self-regulation has failed, but is using Aadhaar an acceptable solution?
So first of all, thanks for having me on the program, Madhav. I appreciate your delicious sense of irony, given I do a lot of gali-galoch on Twitter. For you to call me on this panel is a bit like calling some. Using ID-based recognition is the government can then snoop on what you are watching, where you are watching it without a subpoena. And that is very dangerous. So listen, all the controls you need are already built in. This is a superfluous judgment, and unfortunately in India, it follows a pattern, a systematic pattern in this country where you have the government constantly, the judiciary constantly creating, but also the government sometimes constantly creating these additional barriers. When there is parental failure, when there is state failure, they don't want to accept failure. They don't want to accept negligence on part of the parents. They pass the burden of their negligence on to operators, on to content creators, etc., etc., etc. It is fundamentally, a lot of our laws are colonial laws, which are meant to minimize the cost to the occupying power and maximize the responsibility of the occupied. Sadly, that mentality continues in our jurisprudence today. It is a very dangerous judgment, and certainly linking it particularly to Aadhaar card or any form of unique ID is an extraordinarily dangerous.
All right, let me bring in Sriraj Nair on that, because Sriraj Nair, one very important point that has been made by several of our panelists is that this is an issue that has not come up for the first time. On 2021, there are a series of aspects from categorizing, which various OTT platforms say they are following. There are committees which have been asked to be put in place. Those have been put in place. Now, if parents are failing, or at specific levels there are issues of failures at that level, says Abhijit Iyer Mitra, does that mean that we can then just go ahead and put the entire powers in the hands of the government? There is one government today, there may be another government tomorrow, and who's to say what that could lead to in terms of actually monitoring or specifically looking at the kind of content that is there as far as these platforms are concerned? Sriraj Nair.
See, Madhav, we had already approached the Information INB Ministry to have a check and to have a regulatory board on the contents of what they're showing on the OTT platform. The OTT platforms became very famous during this lockdown time, and we saw the kind of anti-Hindu. Please don't take it that I'm doing Hindu-Muslim here also. There were so many films which were shown on the OTT platforms which were out and out anti-Hindu. Under the guise of creative freedom, they were absolutely ridiculing Hindu Dharma and our holy saints. So that is one aspect. Second aspect, it is, there is always a large amount of curiosity amongst the youth, teenagers. The kind of movies shown, it is as good as porn. So there has to be a regulatory board which has to monitor the contents of what they're going to show on the OTT platforms. It's very dangerous.
Parental controls come in, sir.
Society today. You say that parents are busy. Parents have their own work. Today, especially in the urban cities, both the parents are working. How do they control? So you cannot say, and this if you are not having a regulatory board, there is a dangerous phenomenon which is going to happen. So there has to be strictly a regulatory board which has to keep a tight check on the films or the content shown on the
it's not practical for parents to exercise the parental control. If I've understood your question, that's what you're saying. Practically, it's not possible. Tehseen, would you like to respond to that point?
Abhijit actually responded specifically to that point on parental control. I mean, from your television to your internet to your devices, everything, and it can come in the parent's device, what the child is watching at real-time information. Today, you even have devices on who your child is talking to. You can control what sites your child goes to and how it goes to. So that's point number one. But please, this argument is extremely dangerous. Let's assume me as a consenting adult, or you, Madhav, or Abhijit, as a consenting adult, like sexual content, or like violent content, or like abusive content.
Your point, 10 seconds,
please. You realize the danger if I want to watch, say, a violent series, the government knowing with my Aadhaar card that I'm watching, let's say I'm watching a Chinese violent series. Do you realize what this government is going to, any government with that kind of draconian power is going to do? What are we doing? How can that be a solution? How can that even be thought about in a civilized democracy?
No, and I'm also going to come into the fact that, today's day and age, we're in a connected world. We're not in a world that is, isolated or in silos. And therefore, Deshratan Nigam, if there is, for instance, one second, let me just come in.
Language is shown on.
Let me just complete my question. Let me complete my question.
Even if the script does not require.
Sir, let me just complete my question. There are several award-winning films. I don't want to get into the specifics, but there are several award-winning films which may have, explicit content or may have adult content or may use a certain language which may not be acceptable. Now, are we going to say that we are going to cut them all away? That Indian public should not see any of them?
Are we going to give the director's artistic leverage over to the courts to decide?
Yeah.
If you go to Banaras, for example, you'll find little kids, everybody, Banarasiya culture is they're very liberal with their terms of endearment. Let's call it that. Right. So what? If you're representing something authentic to that place, it'll be full of lots of gali galoch. What are you going to do about that? Are we going to have homogenized, sanitized sort of fake representation?
Okay.
Art is meant to be art. Okay, you can't allow it to be controlled by the state. That's a very dangerous path to go down.
Deshratan Nigam, please respond to that.
Meant to shock you.
Yes.
One second. One at a time. Yes. Let him have a say as well, please. Yes.
See, I think we have to discuss this in the context of below 18 years. And when the parental control fails or they are very busy, it's a part of a society. How do you deal with that situation? Is that we have to apply our mind. And today children have phones, their own phones in their own names. So age verification becomes very, very important. This content, nobody is trying to tell you that adult like me cannot see, but it is the children that we are dealing with. So age verification is a very important phenomena, whether you do it with any other mechanism, while, when a phone is issued in the name of a child, the age verification, the moment you put the numbers, it can be verified. Those are the things that can be done. We can apply our mind. We can do brainstorming sessions on that. But we have to deal with the age group of the less than 18. We are not talking of adults. We are not talking about curbing artistic, abilities or artistic thought. But the fact remains that we are concentrating on this specific age group, which is very vulnerable. And even the Lord says so. They do not have free consent. And they do not have the free thought, although all the children today think that they have a free thought, but our law does not recognize so. So under 18, we got to find out a mechanism that such kind of a content is not available to them. Parental control is one thing, it can be done, all right. But if it is failing, which actually it is failing because these children have their phones in their own names and otherwise the connections also in their own names in the name of children. Therefore, some kind of a...
Yeah. One of the legal points, sir. One second. I just want to bring in Tehseen on one point at least from the judgment, which says that as per Section 67 of the IT Act, transmission of obscenity is punishable under law, and the transmission of sexually explicit act or conduct is punishable under 67A of the IT Act. Now, this is one of the arguments that is used. And if this is actually the law, can we really fault the courts for arriving at the judgment that it eventually has, Tehseen?
Yeah, but what is transmission of lewd, for example, lewd images? Me sending you without your consent an image, or sending Abhijit or Deshratan Nigam to you, or vice versa, something of that sort.
Okay.
You choosing to watch, say, a violent or an artistic or even sexual content is your own choice. You have to understand the difference in it. And art will always push boundaries. Not will it only just reflect society.
Trying to say what kind of a content it should be there. That content should not be available to less than 18 years. That is the mute focus. Nobody is curbing the freedom of speech or otherwise.
It's only the under 18-year-olds that you're concerned about. Abhijit, quick response, please.
So exactly on that point, remember, when you get a new phone connection, you're meant to show your Aadhaar card at the Airtel or Vodafone or whatever showroom. You then make the check and balance on an existing system such as that where
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you because I'm completely out of time on this entire debate. It's a very engaging one. It's one that many youth, several parents would all be very, very concerned about. But certainly, is the High Court's order the final word? Are we going to see more legal action? What is the government's exact position? All of these are important questions at this point of time. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Tehseen Poonawala, Deshratan Nigam and Sriraj Nair, thank you so much for joining us on this very engaging debate.